Today, we're going to review the paint color Slipper Satin by Farrow & Ball. It's a paint color that represents the delicate color of silk used in traditional ballet slippers. I actually used to do a little bit of ballet back in the day. I was a former ballerina, or ballerino. The video just started and we're like completely off the rails. Great. Anyway, just to mentally prepare yourself for what's to come, I'm going to give you some details about this paint color first, and more importantly, I also want to give you some paint color options to use alongside it. This will hopefully be helpful for the people that are redesigning a space, whether it's a room or even your whole home. That way you'll have an entire Farrow & Ball color palette based around Slipper Satin. Let's get to it, as I do a very mediocre ballet pirouette. Would have been way better if I had a ballet slipper on.
You know Millhouse.
Are you not entertained? Isn't this the most entertaining paint color channel on YouTube? It's very niche. So if you know me, the first thing that I focus on when I'm analyzing a paint color is I look at its light reflectance value. And that's because it just tells us how light the color is. Normally, this is pretty easy information to find, but Farrow & Ball really likes to hide this kind of information. So what I did was I looked at similar colors from Sherwin-Williams and PPG, and by doing that, I would ballpark Slipper Satin as having roughly a 75 light reflectance value. This means it reflects approximately 75% of the light that hits it, which makes it feel pretty light as a paint color. But I think it's properly described as being a chalky off-white. Keyword off. Keyword off. There is some noticeable coloration to it, which gives it more depth than a comparable bright white, which may have an LRV, I don't know, in the high 80s or low 90s. Slipper Satin gives you the effect of being a very pale, warm gray beige color that doesn't have a ton of yellow coming through and absolutely zero blue coloration. So my blue haters watching, you're good. While some colors like this can show green or purple undertones at times, Slipper Satin does a pretty good job at remaining consistently neutral in its warmth, and I suspect it's because of its combination of beige with a touch of kind of browny red as well. Everything about this color is subtle and soft, kind of like the sound of my feet during ballet jumping exercises. I'm like an elephant. I really think it's a color that can be a first choice wall color for a lot of you that like that modern kind of color scheme, but just keep in mind that it will have some coloration to it. Just because Farrow & Ball classifies it as a white or light tone, it will not come across as a clean, stark, or sterile white, which I think is a good thing personally, but it may not be exactly what you're looking for if you want a more modern, minimalist art gallery white. But because it isn't an overly bright white, that means it will contrast with much brighter whites really nicely. And wouldn't you know, this leads me directly into the first of my 4 color pairings for Slipper Satin. This is the light color option, which also happens to be another off-white called Wilmington White. This is definitely the lighter of the 2 colors, and Farrow & Ball classifies it as being a shade away from pure white. It has a touch of cozy yellow cream warmth to it, which gives it some character, but next to Slipper Satin, it is quite a bit lighter, and therefore has a decent level of visible difference or contrast. What's nice is they're both in that same warm neutral territory, and together they can provide a subtle yet noticeable difference between upper walls and lower chair railings, for example. You could even use Wilmington White as a baseboard color for Slipper Satin walls, or even vice versa, just switch it up for something a little different. Now, admittedly, the white paint color that Farrow & Ball recommends for Slipper Satin is actually called pointing, but I prefer Wilmington White because it just feels a little more airy and effervescent, whatever that means in this context. Honestly, whenever I get the chance to use a word like effervescent, I just go for it. You can use Wilmington White as your trim paint here, but stick around to the end of the video because there's another paint color that I specifically recommend on doors and baseboards. Yes, you gotta watch a few more minutes. Don't act like it's a chore. I can promise you it'll be more fun than watching paint dry. Hi-yo! Well, that was a good joke. The next color pairing is more of a mid-tone, and it's a color called Ash Gray, taken directly from Farrow & Ball's Color by Nature palette, which was created in collaboration with the Natural History Museum. So, like the collection describes, it's a color that comes directly from nature itself, and despite the name, I would say it's less of an ashy gray and more of a warm, dusty gray-green that is really accentuated by surrounding warm lighting. In the more shaded areas of your home, it can have more of that gray quality that the name suggests, but its chameleon-like quality is what makes it so interesting to use. It's still definitely within the neutral palette of colors. It's not saturated enough to come across as an accent, but it's a lovely, rich color that can be used in a variety of different ways. Our next color pairing here happens to be the accent. Spoiler warning. It's also the dark color pairing, and it's called Inchira Blue. And no need to address my pronunciation here because I'm pretty sure Inchira is a place in Scotland, and my fiance is Scottish, so I'll just ask her later on. I guess I should have asked her before I recorded this, but here we are. Regardless, the color is a beautiful combination of teal and dark gray. It probably will appear more blue than green to a lot of people, especially because blue is in its name, so you're probably going to be looking for that blue naturally. It also really depends on where the color is being used, because oftentimes this historic color was reserved for exterior doors, and depending on the time of day, it could really impact whether that blue or that green would come out more prominently. For interior use, the color will feel even darker and deeper, giving it a really dramatic effect, especially coming from the other colors we talked about earlier. Inchira Blue will really pop, like pop rocks. Remember those? I guess on the note of exterior use, Slipper Satin could be an awesome off-white main color for a home, with Inchira Blue being the accent color on your front door or any other interesting parts of the home that you wish to accentuate. Finally, the last paired color is the true white color pairing. And for this one, I wanted to go really bright because Slipper Satin, and especially Wilmington White, are pretty light paint colors to begin with. It's Farrow and Ball's all white, and the name speaks for itself. All white, no gimmicks. They created a bright white that doesn't have a noticeable cool undertone like some other comparable colors, and that means it will not only work alongside the warmer neutrals, but also our good friend Inchira Blue. Inchira Blue is one of my best friends, actually. I love that color. I may use it in one of my bedrooms. Hague Blue is another navy worth looking at if you want something with less teal, and we talk about it right over here. So go and watch.